The last thing I remember before the gates closed was the sky. It was blue, calm, ordinary. That detail still haunts me because it was the last normal thing I saw for 10 years. The chains around my wrists were heavier than I expected, not just in weight, but in meaning. Every step toward the entrance felt like I was walking away from myself. My name, my past, my future, all of it stayed behind as the prison swallowed me whole. The gates didn't slam shut like in the movies. They closed slowly, deliberately, as if the building wanted me to understand that this wasn't a moment. It was a transformation. The sound of metal sliding into place echoed to the concrete hallways, vibrating through my bones. It didn't just shut the world out. It sealed me in. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, staring at the space where freedom used to be. A guard nudged me forward without a word. No anger, no cruelty, just routine. That scared me more than yelling ever could. Routine meant this happened every day. Men walked in and disappeared. Inside, the air was different. Thick, stale, like it hadn't moved in years. It smelled of disinfectant trying and failing to cover something rotten underneath. The walls were gray, but not clean gray. This was tired gray, a color that had watched too much suffering to care anymore. They took everything from me. My clothes, my wallet, my watch, time itself. I was handed a uniform that didn't fit properly. Too loose in some places, too tight in others, like it was designed to remind me that this body no longer belonged to me. My reflection in the scratched metal mirror barely looked human. Just another shape and fabric meant for obedience. Then came the walk, down endless hallways lined with doors. Each door identical, each door hiding a story no one wanted to hear. I felt eyes on me, some curious, some hungry, some dead inside. The sound of distant shouting echoed through the building, bouncing off concrete until it became impossible to tell where it was coming from. That was my first lesson. In prison, danger doesn't announce itself. My cell door opened with a mechanical groan, 6 steps long, 3 steps wide. That was my world. There was a bed bolted into the wall like an afterthought, a toilet with no seat, positioned so close to the bed that privacy became a joke. The window was a narrow slit near the ceiling, too high to reach, too filthy to see through. I didn't know if it was day or night. The door slammed shut behind me. That sound, metal against metal, was final, absolute. It felt like something inside my chest cracked open. I sat down on the bed and waited for something to happen. Nothing did. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time immediately lost meaning. There were no clocks, no phones, no way to mark the moment except my own breathing. That's when the noise began. A scream cut through the silence like a blade. Then another. Laughter followed, low, broken laughter that didn't sound human anymore. Someone started banging on their door, shouting words I couldn't understand. Down the hall, a man cried openly, his sobs echoing with no shame and no hope of comfort. I lay back on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding so loud I was sure someone could hear it. Every instinct told me to stay alert, to stay awake, to stay alive. Sleep never came. That first night, I learned something important. Prison doesn't sleep. It watches. Days blended together almost immediately. Meals slid through slots in the door, lukewarm, tasteless, forgettable. Head counts happen at random hours. Sometimes in the middle of the night, lights would flash on and guards would shout commands just to remind us who controlled time now. I tried to keep track of days by scratching marks into the wall. I stopped after a week. It felt pointless. Men around me adapted in different ways. Some puffed out their chests, walking to tears like predators, testing boundaries with their eyes. Others shrank, keeping their heads down, speaking only when spoken to. A few tried to stay invisible, never loud, never noticed, hoping the system would forget them. It never does. I watched a man my father's age get cornered for sitting in the wrong spot during chow. No warning, no argument, just fists. When it was over, he was bleeding on the floor while everyone else stared straight ahead, pretending nothing had happened. No one helped him. Helping is dangerous. That was another lesson. Kindness can cost you everything. Everywhere I looked, I saw fear wearing different masks. Anger, confidence, silence, madness. Some men carved tattoos into their own skin using makeshift needles, not for art, but to feel something real. Others talked constantly, filling the air with noise because silence meant thinking. Thinking was dangerous, because thinking led to remembering, and remembering led to pain. At night, I listened to stories through the walls. Bragging, regret, lies, confessions whispered to no one in particular. One man prayed every night, begging for forgiveness. Another cursed God until his voice gave out. I wondered which one would survive longer. Weeks passed, maybe months. I couldn't tell. My body adjusted before my mind did. I learned when to speak and when to stay quiet. I learned how to walk without looking weak or threatening. I learned to sleep lightly, one ear always open, because danger didn't care if you were tired. The guards changed shifts, but the rules stayed the same. Some were cruel, some were bored, a few were polite, but politeness didn't mean protection. In here, authority was absolute and unpredictable. I watched a man lose his temper over a small disrespect. The next day, his cell was empty. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. That's when I understood the deepest truth of prison. You don't leave the same person who entered. Something gets taken from you, slowly, quietly, until one day you realize it's gone. For some men, it's their empathy. For others, their sanity. For many, it's hope. I felt it happening to me too. The world outside started to feel unreal, like a dream I once had but couldn't quite remember. Faces faded, voices blurred. The idea of freedom became abstract, something people talked about, not something that belonged to me. And then one night, I heard a sound that cut through everything. Not screaming, not laughter, silence. A heavy, unnatural silence that spread down the cell block like a warning. Even the usual noises stopped. No talking, no banging, no footsteps, just quiet. I didn't know it yet, but that silence was about to show me what prison really does to a human being. And once you see that, you never unsee it. The silence didn't last long. It never does. At first, I thought it was a lockdown. Those happen often. Sometimes for fights, sometimes for searches, sometimes for reasons we were never told. But this silence was different. It wasn't enforced. It was chosen. No footsteps. No shouting. No metal doors slamming. Just a thick, suffocating quiet that felt heavier than any noise I'd heard before. Then someone whispered. Not loudly. Not clearly. Just a broken sound that drifted through the vents like a breath that didn't want to exist anymore. By morning, we found out why. The man in the cell 2 rows down hadn't screamed. He hadn't fought. He hadn't even tried to get attention. He had simply decided that he was done being alive in a place that refused to let him live. They opened his door slowly, like they already knew what they were going to find. I didn't see his body, but I saw the guards' faces. Hardened men who had seen violence, blood, and death more times than they could count. Even they looked uncomfortable. They wheeled him out under a thin sheet. Not hurried, not careful, just efficient. Like removing a broken piece of furniture. No announcement was made. No moment of silence. Breakfast trays still slid through the slots on schedule. By lunch, someone else had a cell. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not fear, understanding. This place didn't break men loudly. It erased them quietly. After that, I started paying closer attention. Not to survive. I'd already learned how to do that. But to observe. To understand what prison really was beneath the rules and routines. What I saw was worse than violence. Violence was obvious, predictable, almost honest. What terrified me was a slow decay. Men stopped caring about their appearance, stopped showering, stopped standing straight. Some stare at walls for hours, motionless, like their minds had unplugged from their bodies. Others laughed at things that weren't funny or weren't there. One man talked constantly about his daughter. Every day, same stories, same details. One night, someone told him she'd grown up without him. The next morning, He didn't talk anymore. I watched a guy aged 10 years in one. Hair thinning, eyes sinking, voice losing its strength. He wasn't old, but prison made him ancient, bent, fragile. Time here didn't pass. It pressed down, and some people couldn't carry the weight. The fights became more frequent, not always brutal, but sudden, explosive, a release of pressure. I saw a man stabbed with something no bigger than a toothbrush. I saw another beaten unconscious over a debt worth less than $1. No one intervened. We all understood the rule by then. Mind your business, or become it. The guards found bodies when it was too late, or when it was convenient. Sometimes they searched cells for hours, tearing apart what little people had. Other times, they ignored obvious signs of danger. Justice didn't live here. Order did. And order only existed to keep the system moving. At night, the screams came back. Not every night, but often enough that I stopped reacting. Men reliving moments they couldn't escape. Arguments that happened years ago. Crimes replayed on a loop inside their heads. I heard someone beg for their mother more than once. That sound stays with you. You learn not to respond, not to call out, because acknowledging pain in here makes it contagious, and pain spreads fast. I started to feel myself changing, not in a dramatic way, in quiet ways. I stopped flinching at violence, stopped feeling shocked, stopped imagining life after release. My emotions flattened out, like the edges had been sanded down until nothing sharp remained. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't suffering either. That scared me, because numbness feels like peace, until you realize it's something else. One night during count, a guard lingered at my cell longer than usual. He looked at me, not aggressively, not kindly, but with something close to curiosity. "You're quiet," he said. I didn't answer. "Quiet ones either make it," he continued, "or they disappear." Then he walked away. That sentence followed me for weeks. Disappear. I started noticing the ones who vanished. Not transferred, not released, just gone. Their names stopped being called. Their bunks filled. Their existence erased as if they had never been there at all. No one asked questions. Questions were dangerous. I remember one man who still had hope. You could see it in the way he talked about the future, the way he smiled. He believed he would get out and start over. He kept saying, "This place won't change me." 6 months later, he attacked someone over nothing. 3 months after that, he attacked himself. Hope didn't survive here. It got punished. The longer I stayed, the clearer it became. Prison wasn't about rehabilitation. It wasn't about justice. It was about containment, about locking away everything society didn't want to see and letting it rot in the dark. And we were all rotting, some faster than others. I started having dreams where I was trapped in my cell, even when I was awake. I'd forget where I was mid-thought, forget what year it was. Sometimes I'd wake up convinced I had missed my release date. Other times, I'd wake up convinced I'd never had one. That's when I realized the most disturbing truth of all. Prison doesn't just take your freedom. It trains you to live without it. One evening, I saw a man refuse to leave his cell for rec time. When the guard ordered him again, he shook his head. "I'm safer in here," he said. The guard laughed. That laugh still echoes in my mind, because the man was right. The cell, the thing meant to punish us, had become his comfort. His world had shrunk until the cage felt like home. And that's when I understood what this place really was. Not a prison, a factory, a place that took human beings in and produced something smaller, colder, and easier to control. I didn't know how much longer I could survive without disappearing myself. And I didn't know that the worst thing I would ever witness was still coming. The day my name was called, I didn't believe it. Names get called in prison all the time, for counts, for searches, for discipline. A name being spoken doesn't mean anything good is coming. Most of the time, it means the opposite. So when I heard mine echo down the tier, my first instinct wasn't hope. It was fear. I stood there, waiting for the guard to repeat himself. He didn't. He just looked at me, expression blank, and jerked his head toward the door. "Grab your stuff." My stuff. That was everything I owned in the world. A few folded letters, a worn book with a cracked spine, and memories I didn't know how to carry. I packed slowly, hands shaking, convinced that if I moved too fast, the moment would disappear. The walkout felt unreal. Hallways I'd memorized in misery suddenly looked different, shorter somehow, less powerful. The doors still locked behind me, but for the first time, they opened again. When the final gate slid back, I hesitated. 10 years earlier, I had watched it close. Now it was opening, and I wasn't sure I knew how to step through it. Outside, the light hit me hard, not in a poetic way, in a painful way, like my eyes weren't built for it anymore. The air felt too open, too alive. Sounds came from everywhere at once, cars, voices, laughter, movement. The world hadn't waited for me. It had moved on. No one clapped. No one welcomed me back. A guard handed me paperwork and pointed toward the street like he was giving directions to a store. And just like that, I was free. Or at least, that's what the paper said. The first night outside, I didn't sleep. The bed was too soft. The room too quiet. No door slamming. No footsteps. No shouting. My body didn't trust it. I lay there staring at the ceiling, heart racing, waiting for something bad to happen. It never did, but my mind wouldn't let go. I woke up early out of habit, ate fast, sat with my back to the wall in public places. I scanned rooms without realizing it, counted exits, measured people's movements. Prison had followed me home. I noticed it in small moments. I flinched when someone stood too close. I froze when choices were presented to me. What to eat, where to go, what to do. For 10 years, I had been told everything. Freedom felt like being thrown into deep water, without warning. People asked me questions I didn't know how to answer. What was it like in there? I never knew what to say. Because how do you explain a place that doesn't just punish your body, but rewrites your instincts? How do you describe watching men forget who they were and realizing you were doing the same? At night, the faces came back. The screams, the silence, the man who stopped talking, the ones who disappeared without a trace. I wondered who was still alive, who had vanished completely, and I wondered which version of me had walked out, because I wasn't the man who walked in. That man believed time healed things. Prison taught me something else. Time doesn't heal in a place like that. It erodes. I survived 10 years behind concrete walls and steel doors. I followed the rules. I stayed quiet. I didn't disappear. But survival has a cost. Parts of me never made it out. They're still there, locked in cells, staring at ceilings, listening to screams in the dark. Sometimes when the world gets too loud or too quiet, I feel the walls closing in again. I remember the men who are still counting days, still scratching lines into concrete, still hoping, or no longer able to. People think prison is about punishment. It's not. It's about what happens when human beings are forgotten. And once you see that, once you understand what 10 years of cages, silence, and survival really does to a person, you realize something disturbing. Some sentences don't end at the gate. They follow you forever.